Howdy, folks, and welcome to Cherrypicked. It's the show where we bounce around some free samples of an album and see what might be appealing. My name is Cary Nightingale, and with me, as always, is Amazon.com. Let's top this Sunday. For today's album, we've got something that I found in the Amazon new releases. This came out about 2 days ago. Within the dance and electronica genre. It's Isles by Bicep. I don't know much about it, but I'm expecting a lot of synthesizers. Based on some of the track lengths here, we have a slightly longer average track length, and about 3 or 4 of these tracks have features on them. So I'm hoping some vocal features. I'm hoping this is not just instrumental, but even if it is, there might be something appealing. And also, I have to say the album cover art is highly reminiscent of the ghosting error that we used to get on our Windows machines back in the day. In my first job out of college, which was the like 2005, 2006 time frame, and we used to get that error all the time, and we would make it even worse by trying to drag Windows around the desktop, a lot like what we see on the Isles album cover. But let's jump right in to track 1, which is Atlas, and let's see if it's a quick contender to be cherry-picked. Okay, so it is a lot of synthesizers. It is, I would consider it to be an instrumental, even though we've got some vocals so far. It's probably a sampled vocal kind of playing that melody more than anything. Let's kind of skip ahead and see what else we get in it. So the vocal there, it does end up playing a little bit more of a melody. I am suspicious, though, that rather than being a live human person, it is a sampled vocal being played on a keyboard. But then we get some sort of squeaky melodic synth lines toward the end of the sample, which are pretty appealing. So in true cherry-picked fashion, the first track is a contender. But let's move on to track 2, which looks like Casanova. Kind of sounds a lot like the first track. Similar kind of vibe. Let's skip ahead a little bit. So rather than hearing much of an actual bass line, what I seem to be hearing here is a lot of sub bass, which is good if you want to rattle the speakers out of your car doors, but not so good if you really want a melodic bass line. And I do love a melodic bass line. It's something I feel like there's always an opportunity to have one of those in just about any track on an album, electronic, rock, you name it. But not getting a whole lot of that out of Casanova. Let's move on to track 3, which looks like Apricots. Okay, we've got some kind of interesting chanting vocals. It doesn't sound like it's in English. I'm not sure what exactly to make of that. It's not the hookiest of chants to my ears, but let's see what changes. It sort of continues. And we get more of that thumping bass in the right speaker towards the end there. I'm not really feeling apricots that much. As far as healthy fruit go, maybe that's a good thing, but not the track. Let's move on to Saku. Okay, more of a sampled female vocal. I can't quite make out what that sampled vocal is saying, and it might be actually moving into actual singing, so let's give it a little bit more of a chance. And this is one that is featuring Clara Lassan, so probably some actual singing. And it sounds like the vocal towards the end of that sample moved a little bit farther to the left, but we lose the sample at this point. We're at 29 out of 30 seconds. So it would be interesting to know what comes in after that, what replaces that vocal in the right channel, if I was actually hearing that accurately. But that's interesting, and I do like the feature on that one. It's a nice voice. Let's move on to track 5, which is Lido. Not much by way of percussion yet, but the way that sort of springy sounding synthesizer, the way that that's programmed for the arpeggios, gives it some rhythm. So just because there's no percussion doesn't mean there's no rhythm. Let's continue. And there's some other melodic things happening, mostly in the right, it sounds like. Interesting, not terribly exciting, though. Let's go on to track 6, which also features Clara Lassan. That's X. Not too much there. I will say, since it's an X for the title, that's the Roman numeral 10, we've got 10 tracks, probably should have been at the end. Just a thought. Well, let's move on to track 7, which is, I guess, it could be Rever, or maybe that's Rêver, which I think is French for to dream. And this one features Julia Kent. So a little more movement in the bass implies a lot of harmonic movement with the way that the bass line is moving there. It's a good sound. That's kind of a buzzy bass synthesizer, synthesized bass, but it's not bad. I wonder what part Julia Kent has in this, or if we'll even get to hear it. And it doesn't sound like it. Let's go on to track 8, which is Sundial. Okay, so we've got more of the sub bass, but it's sub bass that's doing what that buzzy bass in the previous track was doing, with that sort of boom, 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 sort of descending movement, which is nice. But on top of it, this one doesn't say it's featuring, so I'm guessing that female vocal is a sample. Where it came from, I couldn't tell you. It doesn't sound like it's in English. It sort of sounds like, both language and melodically, it sort of sounds like maybe it's South Asian, maybe Hindi or some other language like that. But that's definitely appealing. I actually kind of like when I can't tell what the lyrics are because it's a language I don't speak, as opposed to not being able to tell what the words are because I just can't make out what's happening based on my hearing. So Sundial already off to a good start. Let's skip ahead a little bit. And even the rhythm, I really like this rhythm. So not only is it underpinned by that that sub bass. You've got a lot of activity in the rest of the percussion elements to keep it fresh, keep it interesting. It's not just a fast 4/4 or 4 on the floor or anything like that. I'm not counting it. We'll see if maybe for the next 9 seconds of the sample, maybe I can count it out, and it could be in like 9/8 or 11/9. I don't know. Yeah, I can't count that. But let's move on to track 9. I really like Sundial. It's probably the contender for right now to be cherry-picked. But let's move on to track 9, which is Fur, or maybe Fear. Okay, so we've got, with that main synth, the higher pitched one that is probably the most noticeable, almost feels like a missed opportunity because it's sort of hollow sounding. It almost sounds like banging on a lead pipe, sort of a narrow lead pipe because it's kind of higher pitched. But I feel like there's a missed opportunity there to be sweeping from side to side as part of the mix, part of the production. Maybe it's a missed opportunity. Maybe it happened at a different part in the song. That's sometimes a good trick to do. Let's skip ahead a little bit in this sample and see what else we get. And we're not getting what I expected, but that's okay. I'm not the producer, and frankly, not necessarily the intended audience for this. I was hoping to find some sounds that I might like, and I have, but it's not necessarily that track. Let's move on to the album closer, which is Hawk, and this one features Machina. And I think that's going to be a more challenging listen based on just the tonality. It's not necessarily that high-pitched synth is dissonant. Musically, it's just not a pleasant sound because it is very harsh. Let's skip ahead a little bit and just kind of finish off that sample. Okay, so it sounds like that might be Machina, might be the vocalist there, sort of softly whispering the delivery of the lyrics, if that's what it is. And then some more interesting things come in to maybe take a little bit of the attention away from what I was describing as sort of the annoying synth sound. Let's finish off that sample. Okay. Well, those have been the samples from Isles by Bicep. It's time for me to take a short break. I've got some thinking to do, and I'll have some listening to do once I've cherry-picked one of these tracks. And I'll be right back, and I'll let you know which one it was. Howdy folks, and welcome back. The track from Bicep's Isles album that I cherry-picked was number 8, Sundial, and I rated it at a 7.0 out of 10 on the TuneScore scale. Low lights, if there were any. Overly repetitive rhythm section, the bass and percussion that I heard. It was interesting and hooky in the beginning, but it became a little wearying to continue listening to it throughout the track. Highlights, though, I really loved that vocal sample that I mentioned earlier that I assume is probably Hindi or another South Asian language. I hope I'm right about that. I don't want to start a cultural war with anyone if I'm wrong, or if I'm right for that matter. But I really like that as a choice of sample because it's a very sweet, very appealing melody. Something else about the melody that I thought was really great was in the production, there are some synth melodies being played that blend seamlessly in time and in pitch, it sounds like, with that vocal sample. It seems like it was very carefully done as part of the production. So I really like that. I also liked, I mentioned in one of the other tracks that there was a missed opportunity to do some sweep panning on what I thought was sort of a hollow pipe sounding synth. But that happened. We got some good sweep panning when the synths finally really came in the first 30 to 60 seconds. So overall, fairly appealing. This is an interesting adventure that I probably wouldn't usually do, being a genre I'm not terribly familiar with, and an album by an artist that I'm not at all familiar with. But I'm glad I landed on this album and was able to cherry pick from it. I think there's some value in that. But I've had a lot of fun today, and I hope you did too. That's been Amazon.com. I've been Cary Nightingale. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay sound.